From the moment Emma noticed her brother Ethan moving through their Seattle apartment like a quiet shadow, she felt something heavy was pressing on him, something he was trying hard to hide, and it made her uneasy because Ethan had never been the type to withdraw or avoid eye contact. Yet lately he barely spoke and spent most evenings staring at the rain outside their windows as if searching for answers in the gray sky, and on one especially cold night when the wind rattled the glass and the soft hum of the heater filled the room, Ethan finally sat beside her on the couch with a seriousness that made her heart tighten, and he whispered that he needed her to keep a secret, a real one, not the playful kind they used to share as kids, and she instantly felt the atmosphere change. Suddenly the room felt smaller, the silence louder, and she could sense his fear more than anything else. She gave him a slow nod, bracing herself as he stared at his hands, clearly struggling with something deeply personal, and said there was something he had kept from everyone for months, something about someone important, someone he cared about more than he ever admitted even to himself, and the way he hesitated made Emma realize this wasn't just a random confession but something close to his heart, something that had been weighing on him every single day. Before he could say more, his phone buzzed on the table, and the moment he saw the name on the screen, the emotional shift in his face told Emma everything. This person mattered, this person was the reason for the secret, and the reason he couldn't sleep or smile like he used to. He didn't answer the call, he simply turned the phone over as if the name alone had said enough, and Emma waited, feeling a mix of worry, curiosity, and empathy, but Ethan only whispered that he would explain tomorrow because he wasn't ready yet, and his voice held a kind of tired hope, like he wanted to be brave but didn't know how. That night, Emma lay awake thinking about the sudden seriousness in his eyes, the trembling in his hands, and the quiet weight of the moment when he said the word secret, and she realized that whatever he was hiding wasn't something dark or dangerous. It felt emotional, real, something connected to the heart, and she wondered who this person was who could make Ethan, the calmest person she knew, look so fragile and uncertain. The next morning, when the early sunlight painted soft gold on their kitchen walls, Emma watched him move around with the same heavy silence, but now she understood that he wasn't shutting her out, he was gathering courage, searching for words to reveal something he had carried for far too long, and though she didn't know the full story yet, she sensed that his secret was tied to love, longing, and fear of losing someone important to him, and that the truth he planned to share would not only explain his recent distance but also open a new chapter in his life, one filled with emotions he had never spoken aloud. Part 1 closes with Emma preparing herself for the truth, Ethan standing at the edge of a confession he had run from for months, and both of them feeling the quiet moment before something big, something tender and life-changing, finally comes to light. The next morning, with soft sunlight spilling into the small balcony and steam rising from their coffee mugs, Ethan finally gathered the courage to continue the conversation he had paused the night before, and as Emma watched him stare at the horizon with tired eyes, she sensed he was choosing every word with care, until he finally whispered the name Maya, a name Emma hadn't heard in years but instantly recognized as Ethan's closest friend from his college days, the girl with the quiet smile and calm eyes who always seemed to understand Ethan on a deeper level than most people ever tried to, and hearing her name again made everything click for Emma. The late-night distractions, his restless pacing, the way he looked like he was carrying unsaid emotions in his chest. Ethan explained that he never drifted apart from Maya, not truly, because she had stayed in his messages, in his memories, and in the quiet corners of his thoughts for years, and while he always told himself they were only friends, something deeper had been growing inside him, something he never admitted because he feared losing the friendship that meant so much to him, and now the secret he had been hiding for months suddenly made sense. He had fallen for Maya a long time ago, quietly, deeply, and without planning it, but he had never told her, not once. Emma felt a gentle shock because she had always believed Ethan wasn't the type to keep romantic feelings inside for so long, yet here he was, revealing a love that had lived quietly in the background of his life, and it made him look more fragile and more human than ever before. Then Ethan told her something that made everything inside Emma pause. Maya had called last night not just to say she was moving back to Vancouver but because she wanted to tell him something important, something she didn't say yet because he didn't answer the call, and now the guilt on Ethan's face was unmistakable as he admitted he froze when her name appeared on his screen, not because he didn't want to talk to her but because he was terrified that whatever she wanted to say would force him to face his own feelings, to either confess them or bury them forever. Emma tried to steady her breath as she took in the emotional mess her brother was tangled in, and she understood immediately that the someone Ethan had been hiding wasn't just a random crush but a person who shaped his past, his present, and possibly his future. The wind brushed against them gently as Ethan stared at his coffee with a look that carried both longing and fear, telling Emma that Maya's return to Canada made him feel like time was running out, like he was losing his chance to ever tell her what she meant to him. And the pain in his eyes wasn't dramatic, it was soft, honest. The kind of sadness that comes from loving someone silently and watching life pull them farther away. Emma wanted to help but didn't know what the right words were, so she simply listened as Ethan confessed that he didn't know if he should tell Maya how he felt now, right before she was leaving, because part of him feared it would make everything harder, and another part feared that staying silent would be even worse. The morning felt heavier and yet strangely hopeful as Emma realized that Maya's unsaid message might hold the same emotions Ethan had been too afraid to speak, and she gently told him that this wasn't just about timing, it was about being honest with someone who had clearly stayed in his heart for years, someone who might be feeling the same way but was waiting for him to take the first step. Ethan didn't respond immediately, but the way he looked at the sky, with a quiet unhappiness mixed with hope, told Emma that he wanted to tell the truth but didn't know how to begin. Part 2 ends with the soft tension of unspoken love between two people living in different cities, both holding back their feelings out of fear of losing something precious, and Emma understanding that Ethan wasn't just carrying a secret, he was carrying a love story that hadn't been told yet, one that could either bloom or break depending on what happened next. Later that day, Ethan received a message from Maya that made his heart skip a beat. "Can we meet? I need to talk before I leave." His hands trembled slightly as he read the words, emotions rushing through him in a mix of hope, fear, and anticipation, and he knew this meeting could finally bring clarity or heartbreak, yet he couldn't ignore it, and Emma, noticing the change in his expression, encouraged him gently to go, reminding him that he couldn't live with this secret any longer, that the truth had been sitting in his chest too long and was ready to be released. With a nervous nod, Ethan drove to the small cafe where he and Maya had spent countless hours during college, a place filled with memories, laughter, and conversations that had always flowed easily between them, and when he walked in, he saw her waiting with a soft, almost hesitant smile, eyes that reflected curiosity and something unspoken, and immediately he felt the old comfort mixed with new tension, a reminder of how deeply he cared for her and how much he had feared this exact moment. They started talking about ordinary things, work, life, small memories of classes they had shared, the quiet rhythm of conversation that felt safe at first, but beneath every word was a weight neither of them could hide, a feeling of unspoken emotions hovering between them like an invisible thread, drawing them closer even while fear kept them at a careful distance. And Ethan noticed the way Maya's fingers fiddled with her coffee cup, the slight hesitation in her voice, and the softness in her eyes, all telling him that she had something important to say, something she had held back for a long time, and the realization made his chest tighten with anticipation and worry. Finally, Maya took a deep breath and confessed that she was leaving sooner than expected, her job in Vancouver requiring an early start, and Ethan felt the pang of urgency, knowing that the time to speak, to risk everything, was now or never, and as she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, she revealed that she had wanted to tell him something for months but hadn't yet, something she had carried quietly inside, mirroring exactly what he had been feeling, and the shared weight of their silence created a connection that was both comforting and heartbreaking. Ethan leaned in slightly, his heartbeat racing, and asked gently if the reason she had called last night and he hadn't answered had caused her to worry that he didn't care, and Maya looked at him with a flicker of vulnerability, admitting that she had wondered if he was avoiding her, which struck Ethan with both guilt and relief because it was not avoidance, but fear that had kept him silent, the fear of hearing the truth she had kept from him, the fear that confronting their mutual feelings might change everything they had ever known about each other. The cafe seemed to shrink around them as they sat in this delicate moment, filled with past memories, unspoken love, and the fragile hope that the truth could finally come out without shattering what they had. And Ethan realized that this meeting was more than just a conversation, it was the point where everything they had avoided for years would finally face the light, and the tension in his chest became almost unbearable as he waited for her next words, aware that their lives were about to shift in ways he could not predict. Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, a mix of excitement and fear, and she hesitated, showing that she was struggling with her emotions just as he was, and for Ethan, it became clear that whatever she was about to say might change the course of their relationship forever, and the thought of losing her before even confessing what he felt made his heart ache, but it also gave him a surge of courage he hadn't known he had, the courage to finally face the secret he had kept inside. As they sat there, time seemed to slow, and every little gesture, the way Maya shifted in her chair, the soft sigh escaping her lips, the flicker of sunlight on the table, felt amplified, heavy with meaning, as Ethan prepared himself to hear the truth that might mirror his own hidden feelings, to finally learn if the connection he had felt all these years was truly mutual, and the uncertainty made every second stretch, every pause in conversation thick with emotion. The part ended with Ethan leaning forward slightly, holding his breath, the air filled with anticipation, fear, and longing, knowing that Maya's revelation would either confirm what he had silently hoped for or confront him with heartbreak, leaving both of them standing at the edge of a tender, emotional cliff, ready for the next moment when hearts would finally speak, and the weight of months of unspoken love was about to lift, or crush, them, making this cafe encounter a turning point, a delicate, emotional moment where truth and vulnerability collided, and Ethan realized that no matter what happened next, he had to listen, he had to be honest, and he had to face the consequences of the secret he had carried for far too long. Ethan sat across from Maya, the soft afternoon sunlight streaming through the cafe windows, and for the first time in months, he felt the weight of his secret pressing down on him like a living thing, and yet at the same time, the hope fluttered in his chest, fragile but persistent, as he realized that this moment could finally release everything he had carried silently for so long, and taking a slow, steady breath, he began to speak, his voice trembling slightly, confessing that he had cared for her more than a friend ever should, that every laugh, every shared memory, every small moment had become a thread woven deep into his heart, and he had been terrified of losing her if he spoke the truth, terrified that admitting his feelings would shatter their friendship or make her uncomfortable, and as he spoke, Maya's eyes filled with a quiet, emotional light, reflecting a mixture of surprise, relief, and a vulnerability that mirrored his own, and Ethan noticed the small, almost imperceptible tremble in her hands, the way her gaze softened, and the subtle catch in her breath that told him she was feeling everything he was saying. She leaned forward slightly, voice barely above a whisper, admitting that she had carried the same feelings for years, that she had been waiting, uncertain, afraid to risk what they had by speaking out, and in that moment, Ethan felt a flood of emotions, relief, joy, fear, and longing, all colliding, and the air around them seemed to vibrate with quiet intensity, tender and delicate, like a fragile bridge connecting two hearts that had been silently reaching for each other across time and distance, and yet, even as the truth finally emerged, there was the bittersweet knowledge that her move to Vancouver tomorrow meant their newfound honesty would immediately face the challenge of separation, and Ethan didn't beg her to stay, because he understood that love wasn't about control but about respect and trust, and instead he reached across the table, fingers brushing hers lightly, a touch full of meaning, and told her that he wanted to be part of her life no matter the distance, that he was ready to embrace whatever came next as long as it meant being connected to her in any way possible, and Maya's eyes glistened with tears, not from sadness but from relief and emotional release, as she whispered that she wanted the same, that she had dreamed of this honesty, this confession, this moment when both of them could finally speak openly, and they sat there for a long time, hands intertwined, hearts beating rapidly, savoring the rare, fragile clarity that comes after years of hidden feelings. Understanding that even though tomorrow brought uncertainty, today they had found truth, and in truth, there was hope, hope enough to carry them through the distance, to guide their next steps, to keep them close even when apart. And when Ethan returned home that evening, Emma noticed the difference immediately, the lightness in his step, the quiet glow in his eyes, the deep, satisfying breath he seemed to have held in for months finally released, and when she asked gently what happened, he smiled, the kind of smile born from emotional vulnerability and release, and told her simply that Maya felt the same, that the secret was no longer a burden but a shared connection, a tender love finally acknowledged, and Emma hugged him, sensing the peace and joy that comes from honesty, from risk, from finally speaking the truth that had been carried silently for too long. And though the story didn't end in a perfect fairy tale, it ended with the kind of hope and emotional fulfillment that only comes from genuine connection. and as Ethan reflected on the day, he realized that the secret he had been so afraid to reveal had transformed into something beautiful, a shared understanding, a bond of love and trust, and he felt ready for whatever the future held, knowing that distance, fear, and uncertainty could no longer overshadow the truth they had uncovered together. And the final quiet thought in his mind that evening was that some secrets, when finally shared, don't destroy, they heal, they bring hearts closer, and they turn fear into hope. And in that knowledge, Ethan and Maya had discovered the first step of a journey built not on avoidance or silence, but on courage, honesty, and the kind of tender, emotional connection that could withstand time, distance, and life's inevitable uncertainties, leaving both of them forever changed and deeply grateful for the moment when love was spoken, acknowledged, and embraced at last.